Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 195 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 51 of A Storm of Swords. That's Catelyn 7.
Now, you might have noticed that the intro music, was a little different for this episode. And if you don't know why that is, you will find out soon enough. But the music for this episode was provided by W. Braden Madden, and you can find a link to Braden's SoundCloud profile and content in our show notes. And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I am doing all right. It's been quite the week. My youngest, my little girl, turned 17 this past weekend, which is just
grief.
I know.
That's crazy.
It really is. And then she did that on Saturday, and on Sunday she left for the beach for a week with a friend. So growing up.
I guess so.
She's growing up. As much as I try to stop it, I seem to be unsuccessful. But you remember last week I mentioned that I was getting my labs done for my physical.
I remember, yes.
Well, so I assume everybody knows what that means, but basically what they do is they stick a needle in your elbow, what's it called? Your elbow pit there, and drain a few.
Pretty sure they don't call it that, but keep going.
It's the pit of your elbow.
I understand what you mean, yeah.
They drain out a few vials of blood, and they have you pee in a cup, and then they send you on your way. Well,
I never pee. It's all from my blood.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't think
I wonder why that is. We go to the same doctor.
Yeah.
They don't have you pee in a cup.
I mean, I've peed in a cup in my life, but not when I go for my regular labs. It's all blood.
Wow. Well, that is odd. I don't know why that would be for you and not for me.
Have you failed one of their tests in the past and they're keeping an eye on it?
Those who know me would know that's very unlikely. Anyway, so I the first part is the draining of the blood. So the nurse who called me back, she walks me to the area where they drain your blood and sits me down and asks me which arm. And I have basically like the Nile and the Amazon running down my arms. My veins stick out so much. So I said, your choice. Most people find that there's a plethora of opportunity here. Mm-hmm. So whichever one you want to go with. So she goes with my left one. And she sticks the needle in, misses. And she says, "Oh, I've missed. I'm going to try the other arm." So she pulls it out, gets out another needle. She misses again. So she's 0 for 2. She's like, okay, I'm going to try this other one on my right arm. She started on the left. Now she's on my right. She tries the second vein on my right. Misses a third time. And each time she keeps checking on me like, "You doing okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm trying to be cheery. I'm trying to not look annoyed or anything." And but the toughest part is when she sticks the needle in, she's wiggling it around, trying to puncture the vein each time. And I'm like, I'm starting to sweat. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're fine. You're fine." Luckily, I'm not all that squeamish. So I'm like, "Yeah, you're fine. You're fine." So after that third one, she's like, "I'm going to go get someone." And she goes and disappears and comes back and gets another nurse. And that nurse just goes right in, pops 2, 3, whatever vials of blood out, and we're done with it. But I was like, what was that? Why was I a guinea pig there? Was that her first try at this? So
I wonder if so. I mean, you're clearly fiercely proud of your prominent veins. I wonder if their obvious, sort of meatiness is actually a problem here. Are they protected? Are they thick? Are they like rubber sheath?
she kept saying that they were rolling. Like she would try to stab in and it would roll away from her. And that's why she was wiggling around with the needle in under my skin trying to puncture it. I was like, please hurry up.
That's not good.
So yeah, that was my labs. Well, it was fine. I was okay. I stood up on the back of my knees were sweating. They were like sticky with sweat.
I like the idea that after the fourth attempt, she said, "We just pee in this cup."
That's good enough.
We didn't need your blood anyway. Yeah.
It's just a backup measure. Anyway, so how are you doing?
Good. My story from this week is my mother-in-law called to say that her AC wasn't working. Could I come over and take a look? So I was like, sure, I'll come over. And she said it keeps on jumping between air conditioning and heat, and it's finally gotten warm in where we live.
Right.
So she really needed her air conditioning, but she said it keeps flipping over to heat. I keep setting it to air condition, and it keeps flipping over to heat.
Okay.
And I'm like, she's an old lady, and old ladies can make mistakes. And I go in there and I turn it to AC and we run it for a while, and it runs, and there's no jumping to heat. And I get suspicious, and I'm like, I think you might be this might be user error. I have a feeling this is user error. I said, so one of the things she said was, I find it very hard to read because it has a backlight, but it turns off after a few seconds.
Right.
Her eyesight isn't the best, and it was hard to read, but you can turn, if you just up or down the temperature, the light comes on and you can see it.
Right.
So I said, if you need to see it, just up or down the temperature. You can always readjust the temperature, just use that button. And she said, oh, yeah, I know that, or that button. And she pressed the one that switches from cool to heat.
Mystery solved.
And I said, no, do not press that button.
You can also use this cold hot button. Oh, well, she was right. It probably lit up when she pressed it.
It absolutely did, but it did also flick over to heat as well. She called me the next day and she said, Simon, I think you might be right. I'm like, yeah.
Yes, I think I might be as well.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Well, we have a bumper today, so let's get on with it. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Catelyn Stark? So last we saw of Cat, she was arriving at the Twins with King Robb and Edmure, unsure of what to expect from the Freys. After a rough start, with Grey Wind's aggressive reaction to the Frey welcoming party, Cat and family met Lord Walder and his family in the Great Hall. As expected, Walder made pointed barbs and took plenty of jabs at Robb for breaking his oath. However, ultimately it was a tolerable experience. Edmure got to meet his betrothed and was immediately smitten by her. Roose Bolton arrived with bad news of more lost Stark men, ambushed while crossing the Trident. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one, which is in fact provided by one Jenny of Oldstone. So thank you for helping us this week, Jenny. We really appreciate that.
Yes, Jenny requested to write the summary for this chapter like a year ago.
Okay.
It was so long ago. I kept having to remind myself, when we get to this chapter, Jenny wrote it. Jenny wrote the summary. So.
It's strange because nothing happens in this chapter. I don't know why she thought it would be an interesting one. Yeah.
Right, well. And of course, as always, Jenny titles her summaries, and this one is a very fitting title. It's called Boom, Doom, Boom.
Okay.
Which is a reference to the drum that beats in this chapter throughout. Okay, so here we go. Through the cacophony of screeching fiddles, blowing horns, and wailing flutes, the pounding drums match Cat's pounding head as she watches Jingle Bell prance. She's seated next to a drunk Sir Ryman Frey and a sober Roose Bolton, who's only picking at his food.
The wedding feast is a sad affair with unappetizing dishes, but plenty of drink, including spirits for the common soldiers in the camps. Edmure seems most pleased with his new wife, but Roslin appears to have a fixed smile. Many of Robb's men are in their cups, except for his guard. Grey Wind has been banished from the feast by Lord Walder. Noticeably absent are Oliver, Perwyn, and Alexander Frey.
Lord Walder announces the betting should begin, and Roslin pales, then begins to cry. Robb agrees, and the GreatJon throws Roslin over his shoulder, carrying her off to the bedchamber. Catelyn stays behind, as does Robb and his guard. Darcey Mormont asks Edwyn Frey to dance, but he shoves her violently away. As Cat follows him, the Rains of Castermere begin to play.
When Cat grabs Edwyn's arm, she feels chail beneath. Suddenly, the absent phrase and Roslin's crying makes sense. She slaps him, but he shoves her away as well. Robb moves to confront Edwyn, but crossbow bolts catch him in the shoulder and leg, toppling him. Cat tries to reach him, but something punches her in the back and she falls to the floor.
The Small John throws a table over Robb to save him from 3 more bolts. Robin Flint is surrounded by Freys who stab him to death. Sir Wendell Manderly is felled by a quarrel through the mouth. The Small John attacks Sir Raymond Frey with a leg of lamb, a real mutton chop, if you will, but is driven to his knees by a crossbow bolt while reaching for his sword. Sir Hostine Frey cuts down Lucas Blackwood while Black Walder hamstrings a Vance man.
Donald Locke, Owen Norrie, and half a dozen more are slain. Sir Benfrey seizes Darcey by the arm, but she smashes him in the face with a flagon of wine. She runs for the door, but Sir Ryman comes through with more Frey men-at-arms and buries his axe in Darcey's stomach. Northmen begin to pour in from the other door. Cat is momentarily relieved until one of them decapitates the Small John. She spies a dagger and crawls towards it with the intention of killing Lord Walder, but Jingle Bell is closer to hand.
Robb rises, although he now has an additional bolt in his chest. Lord Walder halts the music to mock Robb. Catelyn puts the dagger to Jingle Bell's throat and calls for mercy, begging Walder to let Robb go and promising no vengeance will be taken. She threatens to kill Jingle Bell if Robb is not allowed to leave. A son for a son. Walder says that Jingle Bell is just a grandson and he never was of much use.
Dark armor and a pale pink cloak spotted with blood tells Robb Jaime Lannister sends his regards and thrusts his longsword into Robb's heart. Catelyn keeps her promise and slits Jingle Bell's throat. The bells ring and the drums boom. She thinks of Ned and all her sweet children, imploring Ned to make it stop. The blood runs as Catelyn feels the talons of 10 ravens clawing at her face. She feels a hand at her scalp and has a thought for her hair. Ned loved her hair. The bite of steel at her throat is red and cold.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. We'll have music, such sweet music and wine. The red will run and will put wrongs aright. That's what Lord Walder Frey told Robb Stark last Cat chapter about the wedding and the feast to follow.
He didn't mean wine, did he?
He did not mean wine. Now, the red will run. He did put the word wine right before that so that everyone would think he meant wine. But, wow, this is possibly the most famous chapter in A Song of Ice and Fire thus far.
Yeah, I mean, it has a name. Not many of them have names, you know. This is
right.
It is
maybe the Arya chapter with Ned's beheading might rival it, but
yeah, I suppose so.
I think this one, the treachery was just so extreme, so brutal, so ruthless,
and it's so. I mean, it just like the Ned chapter. Actually, it does upend the story. The story is now completely different than it was at the beginning of this chapter. I mean,
right.
we spent so much time speculating on what was going to happen to Robb, always knowing, because even I remembered this, that this was coming, you know.
So when we were talking last Cat chapter about how it was going to be very interesting to watch Robb go north and try and get past Moat Cailin, you weren't.
The thing about that was that whole storyline I really had forgotten, because of course that was just a foreshadowing of something that never came to pass. So that had completely slipped my mind that there was even a plan to take back the neck, you know.
Yeah, because it obviously wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And this, you know, this chapter, the events of this chapter just so much go against the realm-wide acceptance of guest right that it's just, this is such a betrayal on every level.
Yeah. And I don't know about you. I mean, I was going to leave this for the end of the discussion, but I feel the emotions right now, so I'll ask you. I'd forgotten. I mean, I don't know if this affected me as much the first time I read it, because I believe I'm right in saying that I read this before I saw it. So when I saw it in the show, I knew what was coming. But
yes, I think you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I was affected by it because they were characters that I'd come to know and like. But this time, I've invested a chunk of my life into these characters.
Right.
You
They're
know?
like family.
Exactly. I've thought about them every day for 3 years, you know? And
Yes.
it
right.
was hard. It's a hard read. It is deeply sad that this happened.
Yep. My first time through this past week, my first time through the chapter, I got to the part where Darcey touches Edwyn on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And it was about 1:45, and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop here for now. So I did not want to go to the rest of that chapter and then try and go to sleep. So I couldn't do it. I was like, nope, not ready yet. I'll finish this in the daylight tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, foreknowledge cushioned the blow, but it was definitely more of a blow this time, I think. I mean, I'm comparing this to something that happened to me 10 years ago. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe I sobbed for 3 days.
You listen to that band that makes you cry. I can't remember what they're
the
called.
Wedding Present was that. But very specifically when you're cheated on by a girl. No other time.
Oh,
reading a sad chapter of a book and then listening to The Wedding Present, that's not going to gel. It has to be
no correlation. No. Okay.
But a girl leaves you,
I get you.
You're going to cry.
All right.
So Cat notices, I mean, obviously we're getting all this from Cat's perspective, and she, I mean, in some ways to keep the story alive, because I mean, it would just be the story of a wedding up until the point when it takes a turn, were it not for the fact that she's constantly on edge about things still. She never trusted that the guest rights were going to be observed, and she was worried the whole time, and she was looking for signs, but never enough to do anything about them. You know, she saw some things, but it just didn't, it never rose to the point of intervening in any way.
Yeah, none of the things she saw were big enough to take action over, to do anything about. You know, even as little as the person sitting next to her, Ryman Frey, drinking so heavily and sweating so heavily and being so curt toward her. He doesn't know her. I mean, she doesn't know him. That could just be his Friday night routine or something, you know. But
most guys at weddings, to be honest, Mackelly.
Right. And, you know, Roslin's forced smile and her tears, Cat just chalked up to her, Roslin being nervous about the wedding and the bedding and all that. And it didn't help that Cat was so nervous at her own wedding that she, you know, probably felt a lot of anxiety and just thought, oh, I can relate. I didn't know the man I was marrying either. It was really awkward and tough. Now, Oliver Frey and they're all Freys. Oliver Frey and Sir Perwyn Frey missing might have been enough to get the spidey senses tingling a little bit, but still not enough to do anything about it.
Have you ever opened a can of worms and then put them back in the can and gone, where are Oliver and Perwyn? No. There's bound to be Freys missing. There's a bazillion of them.
Right. Honestly, the biggest red flag, if I were her, would have been Greywyn's reaction last chapter.
Yeah.
You know, to the Freys that came out to meet them.
Greywyn also had that reaction to Queen Jane's
mom and uncle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. Sorry.
Rolf Spicer.
I just learned Rob's wife's name in the TV show just before we came on air, and that sort of got in my head then.
Oh, yes.
When I read it, I was like, I don't think I could have come up with that under torture. I had no idea what that woman was called. Do you remember?
His wife on the show? I do
It began with T?
Taisha.
It was Talisa.
Talisa. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think maybe you mentioned that before.
Oh, so no, it's not that I haven't remembered it for 5 years. It's been 3 weeks and I've forgotten. Nice.
You may have mentioned that her name was was something other than Jane, but maybe
Yeah.
not. Who knows? But Cat actually wonders if there's been a less joyful wedding before remembering her own daughter Sansa's likely very joyless wedding to Tyrion. When we were there, we know the bride cried that day
Yes,
too.
yes,
So-
and not because she knew what was coming. Well, actually, yes, because she knew what was coming.
Right. Yeah. But so Walder takes a book from
No.
that
From
book.
Danny's library.
So Walder takes a page. Yes, the library of Danny. Walder takes a page from Danny's book here. Back in the last Danny chapter, was it the last one? I think it was the last one. When she plied the second sons with an excessive amount of alcohol before she attacked the force waiting for her outside of Yonkai. Here, the Freys ply the Stark and Tully army with as much alcohol as they could possibly want before their surprise attack. And we...
Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say, we saw last Arya chapter, the revelry going on outside the castle with tents packed with drunk men. So it is pretty well saturated. The Stark Tully force is pretty well saturated with alcohol by this point.
I misunderstood what you meant by that in the notes. I thought you were saying that basically the page he'd taken from Danny's book was the sort of like make a big splash. Don't do things by halves. He could have
Right.
assassinated Robb. He could have poisoned Robb and nothing else. But he went the
Right.
whole hog and killed every Northman he
Right.
could find in his path.
Like Danny taking all of the Unsullied instead of just what she could get her hands
The
on.
very thing I was thinking of, yes.
Uh-huh. And even Cat wonders why Peter Pimple was engaging in a drinking game with the GreatJon when he was a third the GreatJon's size. And I don't think it really mattered because I think the point was get the GreatJon as drunk as possible. Before
All you need is
ambush
3 of them
begins.
to have drinking games against him. Sequentially, not at the same time.
Yes, and they got 2 of them. There was 2. I think the other one was named Waylon.
I think
Frey,
so, yeah.
maybe? But
And plus,
he was the first
Great
person.
John would be drinking between the drinking games anyway. So
Right.
yeah, but all of that, Cat is like, again, it's a wedding. Would you expect the Great John to not get smashed at a wedding? No, he's gonna get drunk as a lord.
Right. Yes, ask him not to breathe, I think is what she's like. I wish he'd stay sober, but that'd be like asking him not to breathe.
No, Roose Bolton toasts the 2 Walders, the grandsons who are now at the Dreadfort in the company of Ramsay Snow. We obviously don't. I use the word company because we don't know in any way, shape, or form how they're being kept. Ramsay is a scary host, but maybe he's treating them well. Catelyn thinks that Lord Walder might see that as a threat, like, hey, I have your 2 grandsons.
Yes, yeah, that's what she thinks she sees in Walder's eyes, or his reaction, that he takes it as a threat. And it made me wonder, that little line right there, was the toast done to make sure the Freys go through with this plan? Is it Roose, the driving force behind the treason?
Or vice versa? Is Roose aware that this might be about to happen and reminding them that he should not be one of the victims of this plan?
Oh, could be that too. Yes, definitely could be that too.
Yeah, I see your interpretation. I see my interpretation. So, and at the end, we didn't say it in the summary, and Jenny did not put it in the summary, but the implication of who drove the sword into Robb is that it was Roose. It's not said directly, but the person who did it quoted what Jaime Lannister said to Roose Bolton, and he's wearing a pink cloak which matches the Dreadfort colours.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Exactly. Yes, definitely heavily implied that it is
And
Roose
pretty
Bolton.
much everybody else from the north is killed. If you look at the list of people from the north, or from anyone from the Stark side of things, is killed here. With I think we can only think of three exceptions. One is Edmure. We don't know what happened to Edmure. It's possible
Right.
nothing happened to Edmure. Two, the GreatJon. The GreatJon went off to do the bedding. Now, they may have excluded the GreatJon from this because they thought he might tip the balance of the battle.
True.
And the third one
Yeah.
is Roose Bolton. We never hear what happened to Roose Bolton. We assume he is the one who murdered Robb.
Yeah, because the last we saw of him, he mumbled something too quiet to hear to Cat, and then went off looking for a privy. So he left, and he wasn't wearing armor, black armor, when he left. So he likely went and put on armor and then came back in. So, but I mean, the playing of the Rains of Castermere to signify the ambush certainly screams Lannister involvement.
No question. Yeah,
So,
that seems clear to me. But it's
but so then the question that actually isn't clear though is, was the deal made with Walder, with the Lannisters, with Walder, or was the deal made with Roose, and Roose forced the Freys into it by holding the Walder grandsons captive at the Dreadfort? It's possible the deal was made with both. Maybe all of them are involved.
Right.
So that's a third option.
The tricky part about that, of course, is that if you make that deal with both of them, I mean, if you try to make a three-way deal, it only takes one of them to tell the Starks, and the deal is bust.
Right.
So maybe the two-way deals were made independently, and when Bolton arrived, he was like giving the eye to Lord Walder, and he was saying, "I've got your grandsons, and you know what that
Don't
means."
forget.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's a good interpretation. I hadn't really thought that through in that way, but that toast does feel like the overture, reminder, and sort of agreement between the two of them.
Right. And of course, saving the Walder boys seems much more deliberate now. When Ramsay said, "Save me the Frey boys and kill everyone else," but was he saving them because they're Freys and Roose Bolton married into the Frey family, or was he saving them as hostages for leverage against the Freys for this event?
I think there's a lesson here. Keep your enemies alive. You might
There
always
you
be able
go.
to use them somewhere down the line, yeah.
And then, if we believe that Ramsay was keeping the Frey boys alive to use as leverage, then does that mean that Roose Bolton was aware of what Ramsay was up to, possibly giving him instruction? That's something we still don't know. But he saved those Frey boys for some reason.
And that incident significantly predates Roose Bolton meeting Jaime Lannister.
Right. Yes, very much so. Yeah, and so, then that brings us to what we know of Roose's involvement thus far in all this treachery. And, we've discussed Roose. We believe it certainly is heavily implied that Roose is the one that delivers the final blow to Robb. His own bannerman does it. And, we've discussed plenty over the story of how Roose was a hard one to read. Couldn't quite get a finger on the pulse of what he was up to or what he was thinking. And clearly Arya had subconscious concerns because she never revealed herself to Roose when she very easily could have. So let's take a quick run through what Roose's, like a timeline of his odd behavior here. So we were in the Arya chapter. She was in the room with him when he was getting leeched and all the Freys were all around him. When he learns of the Battle of the Blackwater, how it went decidedly the Lannister/Tully, or Lannister/Tyrell way, and very much against Stannis. He learns about the Lannister and Tyrell alliance, and he learns about the murder of Bran and Rickon, now knowing Robb doesn't have a clear heir at this point.
Yeah.
And while he's learning all this, the Freys are very vocal about Robb bending the knee and just suing for peace, giving up. Just, it's time to quit. And Roose at least feigns loyalty to Robb, but then, in like the very next breath, orders Tallheart and Glover to Duskendale, and I'm going to use quotes here, on the king's command, which really just accomplishes removing a third of the force that's loyal to Robb.
Yeah. And actually, well, keep going. Sorry, you.
Oh, but we're nearing current times, and then learns about Robb betraying the Freys by marrying Jane, and then the last things we learn is that he frees Jaime, gives Brienne to Morgoth, despite pretty much the opposite instruction coming from Riverrun. So, did his planning of the betrayal begin by sending those men to Duskendale? Is that when he thought, oh, this is not going to go Robb's way? It's time for me to come up with a new plan here.
I think that if we assume now that he truly was treacherous to Robb, then yes, I think you can say that. But I think you've actually hit the nail on the head. It actually began even earlier than that. It began when Ramsay made sure the Walder Freys were taken into custody. Right. Well, wait. If you assume that, then Ramsay's sacking of Winterfell.
Yes, and those happened kind of around the same time. When Roose sent the men to Duskendale and Ramsay sacked Winterfell was kind of right toward the end of A Clash of Kings.
Oh, I thought Duskendale was much more recent than that. I thought Duskendale was since the Battle of the Blackwater.
Yeah, they both were after the Battle of the Blackwater.
Okay. Yeah, both after, but I thought the Winterfell was going on sort of simultaneously. I thought the previous book ended with Battle of the Blackwater and the sack of Winterfell, with the sort of two main threads at the end of the last book, but maybe I'm misremembering.
No, they were pretty close together.
But I feel like Duskendale happened in Storm of Swords.
Well, what happened in Storm of Swords was
news of
us seeing through Tyrion's eyes that Tywin knew about the movement to Duskendale and setting up an ambush for them there, but it was initiated toward the end of A Clash of Kings.
This is beginning to be pretty compelling. It's a circumstantial case you're building, but there's a lot of circumstance here. But I will say, actually, the moment in the chapter where I felt he was now guilty as charged, even if you sort of like, Martin was intentionally ambiguous and didn't say, and then Roose Bolton killed Robb. He said, a guy who could pass for Roose Bolton killed Robb. It's when the Northmen rush into the building. Uh-huh. When the Northmen rush into the building,
yes.
and for a moment, hope flickers in Cat's heart. Who's there? Which Northmen are there? Well, there's the Northmen who came from Riverrun with Robb's party. And then there's the army that came with Roose from Harrenhal.
Right.
And that army, primarily because of who he left behind at the Trident, comprises Boltons and Karstarks. The only Northmen. So there's two possible interpretations. It could be Freys disguised as Northmen, but what the heck's the point? You're in the Frey castle. There's no reason for disguise. So it's really Northmen. The only Northmen who wouldn't defend Robb are the Boltons and the Karstarks, potentially. And so for me, if they did that, that's it. The die is cast. And the way just what you were talking about there, he just keeps consorting with the enemies. He consorts with the Karstarks. He consorts with the Freys. He consorts with Jaime. Everything Suddenly he's not so hard to read.
All of a sudden, it's clear as day almost.
So we mentioned this last time. Roslin was certainly nervous about the wedding and the bedding, but was there more going on here? Catelyn, when the hammer falls here, Catelyn puts Roslin's tears down to her foreknowledge of what was about to come. But that seems, I'm not sure that's right. I mean, I think a young girl would be plenty nervous enough about the wedding and bedding without that. And also, I'm not sure she'd be privy to the plan.
That was what I was going to ask you. I had it in my mind to ask you. So the evidence that Cat presents are the tears and the fixed smile. She cried last chapter when she met Edmure, and then she cries right before the bedding and she looks stricken. But the whole feast, she had a fixed smile on her face. So that's the evidence that Cat thinks of at the end when she thinks
I should have seen this coming. Yeah.
Rosalind's tears. Yes. But why tell Roslin? What good
Right.
would it
Yeah.
do? And then the next question that begs is, did the rest of the Frey women know? Because if all the Frey women knew, that was some fantastic acting. So much fun having and dancing and joke making, and yet they knew this was coming.
Mackelly,
That's
you
impressive.
have to learn what drinking can do. It really it can really smooth away the rough corners of your day.
Well, it certainly seemed like the men were very
Yeah.
tense, and it certainly seemed like Rosalind wasn't loving the idea. So if Rosalind knew and she was as miserable as she was, it's just surprising that if all the Frey women knew, they'd be so loose and free
I'm
about
going to go
everything.
back to a point that I wanted to make earlier, which is that Kat saw the signs, but she was predisposed to see the signs because she didn't trust Walder Frey. And so her seeing the sign in Rosalind's nervousness and fixed smile and tears is just, it's self-serving once you know the answer. It didn't mean anything. I actually like your idea that she had a secret lover.
Oh yes, right. We forgot. Yeah, I forgot about the secret lover possibility. That is
Same
definitely
fixed smile, the
a
same
candidate.
tears. Perfect. Yeah,
Right.
I really don't think
Yeah.
that Rosalind would have been told. It just doesn't help anyone. What if Rosalind falls in love with Edmure
It doesn't.
and the first thing she does when they get married is, I got a secret.
Right. That's what that's why they kept turning away the food and whispering to each other. She was like,
Right.
run now, run fast." Well, we don't know the mystery of what Rosalind knew, but possibly the mystery of why Walder chose Rosalind. The answer might have been to entice Edmure as much as possible, keep him happy, keep the Starks happy with the nice accommodations, all in the effort to reduce the chances of anything going
Right,
wrong before
true.
the ambush. Put your best foot forward to try and keep everyone happy and involved.
So why did Edwyn Frey push Darcey? Well, I mean, Darcey tried to get him to dance, right? But he
Right.
responded
Yeah.
violently. Is that just because the spring was about to trip and he was on edge, and
Yeah.
that's why he did it? You're right.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And Kat noticed that guests, because we get the description of her thoughts, that guests and servants were coming and going, and many, she assumed, were going over to what they were calling the Bastard Feast, which was happening in the Western Castle, and some might have even been going all the way out to the camps. And I thought, the Freys must have been coming and going to put mail on underneath their clothes, because otherwise their dance partners and those around certainly would have noticed if they were suddenly squeaking and rattling and their arms were hard as
Okay,
rocks.
I don't know, but it feels like they might wear their mail to this. I mean, it would be heavy and it would be uncomfortable, but they are a martial. This is a feudal time, and these people are always on the edge of war. Uh,
Yeah, well, Kat, it was the reason that Kat
no.
realized something was
Yes,
up when she
exactly.
touched Edwyn.
But
So she would have thought, she seemed to
Yeah.
think it was odd that he was
but
wearing armor
but
underneath.
all I'm saying is you don't know that he didn't wear it from the get-go.
Well, I guess not, except for the Cat was so surprised, and that's
She
when she
hadn't been
realized
feeling him all over until that
something was wrong.
point. So
She hadn't. she hadn't. That's true. Yeah, the Cat says the hall was so jam packed that you couldn't lift your arm without elbowing your.
that's where they were wearing
neighbor.
mail.
So if they had armor on, yeah, to protect those ribs. Certainly, it would have been discovered if they were wearing mail under their clothes the whole time. But I will say, because I looked for it, there's no specific mention of any Frey men dancing, other than Edwyn saying to Darcey he's done with dancing for the nonce. That's the only time it's ever referenced that the Frey men were dancing. So maybe they were trying to stay clear
Exactly,
of much
yeah,
contact
yeah.
as much as possible.
Well, the Rains of Castermere plays, which is the song of how the Rains were destroyed by the Lannisters, and so it's a portentous piece of music for the Lannisters to spring a trap, and that
Yeah. And we've discussed the Rains of Castermere throughout the story, always associated with some sort of Lannister retribution type situation. And then right before all the chaos begins, Cat has a rather prophetic thought. She thinks to herself, how many men here tonight would be dead before the year was done? And we are very near the end of the year 299 AC. But many men didn't even make it another hour after she had that thought. Another 20 minutes, possibly. So yes, that's when all chaos reigns, when the music changes. And so, the chaos begins, and Robb gets hit with 2 crossbow bolts, and Cat gets hit with something in her back. I imagine it was probably also a crossbow bolt. And she grabs the dagger and she holds Jingle Bell hostage, and Robb gets back up. And then Cat makes a plea to Walder to spare Robb, and she promises no retribution if he allows it. And I don't know. I don't know that there was ever a chance that was going to work. I could certainly understand making the request because, you're grasping at straws here. But
if I were Lord Walder, I'd say, do you promise?
Because we trust the Stark promises around here.
Especially one given under such circumstances, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and then Cat tells Robb to walk out, leave her for Jane's sake. And Robb says back to Cat, Jane, and then pauses and says, Mother, Greywind. And Cat cuts him off and says, yes, go to Greywind. But I wanted to hear him finish that sentence because I wanted to know what he was going to say. I was wondering if he realized that, Greywind was snarling and aggressive toward the Freys last chapter, and it dawned on him, wait, he's also been aggressive toward some of Jane's family as well. And maybe he's thinking, Jane might be involved in this. Jane and her family could be involved in this, but he never got the words out.
Spits out 3 nouns, and you spin a whole story from it.
Well, why would he say Jane, Mother Greywind, and what about Greywind? Why are you comparing
he's
Greywind
listing
and
the
Jane?
Things he's liked. You know what I like, Mum? As I shuffle off this mortal coil, you, the wife, the dog. Everybody else, I don't care.
Yeah, that's right.
But I like your idea. I like your thought that it finally dawned on him what had always dawned on Cat, that Greywind is a barometer of who should be friends and who should be treated as enemies. But then that does leave us with the Westerlings are still around. They what is going to happen with them? But anyway.
And speaking of the Westerlings being around, Robb has, unfortunately, as you said, left this mortal coil. And as to our knowledge, does not have a son yet. We have not checked in with Jane since.
Can't wait for her to become a POV character.
It doesn't. Yes, there we go. Or maybe the Blackfish will be. She's at River Run with him. But it doesn't seem like Robb's kingdom is set to go on without him. Most that he asked to fix their seal to his succession plan were here at this feast, and aren't in a very good position to say, oh, here's what Robb's succession plan was.
Right, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
There are a couple. There's a pair who aren't here that were there with Robb, and that's Mage Mormont and Galbart.
Was Brynden Tully there as well? He wasn't.
No, this was on their way after they left. It was twins, between River Run and the twins. Yes. I think it was Cat 5, the one you and Jenny did together. So, those two could possibly spread the word of who Robb wanted to succeed him, which we don't know. We know that he told his mom. We know he told Cat, I want it to be Jon, but we don't know what the final decision was because we never got to see.
This is actually the thing I was just desperately scribbling in the notes. What does this mean for Jon? Because we speculated about what was in that document when it was written, but we kept saying, well, but this is if Robb doesn't have children and Robb dies sometime down the line, knowing all the time that it was coming towards us like a freight train.
Right.
But
yes.
now we do need to know what that document said, and you're right, there aren't very many people who witnessed it and know it. So
And her
we
still
have to
alive.
hope, right? And of course they're on their way to help spring a trap, the main thrust of which is no longer coming.
Right.
So tricky.
Yes.
So right at the end, Cat thinks that ravens are attacking her face, but presumably that isn't what really happened.
Right.
My guess was that someone came up from behind her with a mailed glove and sort of grabbed her face and pulled her hair back and scratched her face in doing it.
Well, that
But
would
you've
be
got something
5
else?
ravens.
Yes, and she did say 10.
Yes. The leading thought, and it's pretty much confirmed later, is that she was raking her own face with her fingernails.
Oh.
And in fact, I believe Jenny's original version of the summary mentioned that, but I wanted to specifically discuss it, so that's why I put it as ravens attacking her in the summary. So it's pretty well accepted that she was raking her own face with her nails. So
in agony, anguish.
Yes, and she and building madness, I guess. That's
right.
That's what someone shouts is, she's gone mad, end her, and someone grabs her hair and does end her, it seems.
So the people we definitely know are lost are Robin Flint, Wendell Manderley, the small John Umber, Lucas Blackwood, Donald Locke, Owen Norrie, Darcey Mormont.
That last one, it saddens me. I really like Darcey as a minor character.
Me too. It saddens me as well. So we don't know about Edmure. But there's something you're going to say later in this discussion, which is going to make me think that Edmure is still alive.
Okay.
One of the portents
right.
suggests he's going to still be alive. Roose, we assume he's still alive because he isn't amongst the dead, and he apparently was on the wrong side of history here. And then the interesting one for me is the GreatJon. So as we talked, it did occur to me that they wanted the GreatJon out of there, but now. That's like a lion loose in the castle. I mean, when he finds out what's happened, so we don't know what's going to happen to him.
It might be like a giant loose in the castle.
Right, true enough, yeah. So tell us about all the foreshadowing that I missed.
Well, this has been going on for a while. It started back, the first reference that I have written down anyway happened in chapter 48, which was Dany 4 of A Clash of Kings. And it's Dany's vision in the House of the Undying, and she sees a feast of corpses in a room full of savagely slaughtered bodies, and many of the corpses have cups and spoons in their hands, and above the corpses sits a dead man on a throne with the head of a wolf, wearing an iron crown and holding a leg of lamb like a king might hold a scepter. So,
much of that happened here.
Yes. Including the leg of lamb.
Yes, even the leg of lamb. That's what I was thinking. So we knew that at the time. I think we were circumspect about discussing it, but we knew exactly what that was referring to when she saw it.
Yes.
And then in chapter 56 of A Clash of Kings, which was Theon 5, Theon had a dream. After Asher leaves Winterfell and takes most of the men, he was dreaming he was at the feast at Winterfell when King Robb arrived. And he sees all kinds of dead Starks, some known, some unknown, and dead Winterfell citizens. The doors blow open, and Robb and Grey Wind enter, both bleeding from 50 savage wounds. Now, most of that, of course, is a portent of what Theon himself would do.
Right, yeah.
But the last part is clearly, well, we don't know what's happened to Grey Wind. I should add to the list of who we don't know the outcome for. Grey Wind is
right. We don't. Yeah.
Well, maybe the GreatJon and the Grey Wind can ride out together.
Right. Yeah, we had discussed at the time that possibly that was the treason of the savage wounds were the treason that Theon had done to Robb.
Right. Yeah. Which I still think is a reasonable interpretation of that, but now that Robb has suffered savage wounds,
Yes, we can
seems
mention
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then another one is Tywin's letters that Tyrion interrupts, and that was in chapter 4 of A Storm of Swords, which was Tyrion's first chapter of this book. And the conversation goes something like this: Tywin, did you come here to complain about your bedchamber and make japes? I have important letters to finish.
Important letters, to be sure. I'm Tyrion.
Yes. Some battles are won with sword and spear, and others with quills and ravens. And then, scene. Then Tywin goes on to tell Tyrion about the Tallheart Glover group heading for Duskendale and his ambush that he has waiting for them. Which, you pull it all together and you think, oh, he's writing letters to win this battle, to win this war.
Yeah, it's very good. So in Davos 1 of A Clash of Kings, which was chapter 10, Patchface sang a song. Davos was waiting to meet with Stannis before being thrown into the dungeon by Melisandre. He saw Shireen, Patchface, and Edric Storm in the garden, and Patchface's song went, "Fool's blood, king's blood, blood on the maiden's thigh, but chains for the guests and chains for the bridegroom, I.
Uh-huh.
So fool's blood, well, if you remember at the end of this chapter, rather horribly, Cat was under extremis, but she murdered Patchface,
Yes.
who was
of Jingle Bell.
Sorry, Jingle Bells, who was of all the Freys the most innocent.
Right.
But the king's blood, obviously Robb died. Blood on the maiden's thigh, well, Roslin is being deflowered at this very moment. Chains for the guests and chains for the bridegroom. So that's the moment where I'm beginning to think that Edmure Tully lives.
Yes.
Because
it
he's
fits.
not blood, he's chains.
Right. Yes. It doesn't say blood for the bridegroom too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which when that song came about, it was really hard to not be like, do you know what this is about? And then there's Melisandre's leeches, which happened in chapter 36 of A Storm of Swords, Davos 4, which I think is the last time we checked in on Davos. And Melisandre had...
Can I just say, as you say these words, my little heart is going to skip at the end with joy, just so you know.
So Melisandre has these 3 leeches with Edric Storm's blood, which Edric Storm is Robert's bastard son, and Stannis threw each leech. That's hard for me to get out there. Each leech into the fire one by one, and as he did so, he names the usurpers Joffrey Baratheon, Balon Greyjoy, and Robb Stark with each toss. And now 2 of those 3 are dead. So...
You know why I'm excited? Because the one who's still alive is the one I most want to be dead.
Right. So the question is, did Melisandre cause these deaths with her little leech trick? Or did she see these deaths in the flames and thought, you know what? I could really make him think I've got some power here if I just... take some leeches and throw them into the flames and say their names.
Very interesting. Yes. That's the prophecy or interference.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Good question. And then the Ghost of High Heart's dreams in chapter 22 of A Storm of Swords, which is Aria 4. I dreamt of a roaring river and a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted with red tears on her cheeks. But when her eyes did open, oh, I woke from terror. All this I dreamt and more. So all of this points to Catelyn Stark. So the roaring river, well, if you remember, the rain has made the green folk outside roar constantly. That's one of the things that's been mentioned, is how loud the river is running.
Right.
A woman that was a fish, a Tully who becomes a Stark, would definitely was a fish.
Right.
Dead she drifted with red tears on her cheeks. Well, that's the scratches that you think were self-imposed.
Right.
But then her eyes did open and I woke from the terror. Seems a bit weird, but maybe it's kind of like the dawning realization of what's about to happen is perhaps what she's referring to there.
Could be, certainly.
Yeah.
And then the next Ghost of High Heart chapter, which was chapter 43 of A Storm of Swords, Arya 8. She has another prophecy that hits pretty close to home here. She says, I dreamt a wolf howling in the rain, but no one heard his grief. I dreamt such a clangor, I thought my head might burst. Drums and horns and pipes and screams, but the saddest sound was the little bells. That fits really closely with what happened here. I mean, I don't even know if I have to specify, but the Grey Wind howling once the ambush started, possibly howling beforehand, but the music was too loud and terrible for us to know. Yeah. The description of the clangor fits exactly with the details we got in this chapter. And then the saddest sound was the little bells, it seems to be in reference to Jingle Bells, bells ringing while Cat kills him.
Yeah. It's
actually mentioned, she thinks, as she slices his throat, she's doing it so violently that his little bells are jingling.
That is just pretty bleak, by the way, the whole Cat killing Jingle Bells. I mean,
yes, it is.
There wasn't much gained from doing it. I understand the threat.
Right.
But the following through on the threat, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it was just out of anguish. Yeah. But there were a few smaller clues that are worth mentioning, and I kind of alluded to a couple of them last chapter.
I remember asking you to tell me when they came to fruition.
Okay, well, they have come to fruition. So first of all, this isn't part of the Easter eggs I was referencing, but at the end, the very last sentences of the last two Arya chapters, Arya 9, the Hound ends the whole chapter with your uncle's bloody wedding, which I slipped into the summary, which is why I did that terrible Hound accent, because I wanted that in there, your uncle's bloody wedding, but I didn't want to give away what it might be in reference to. And then Arya 10, just last chapter, he ends it with your bloody brother.
He does say bloody kind of a lot.
He does say it a lot.
The other day at work, I said I had to step away from a call. I said bloody dog, and the people on the call thought my dog was bleeding, but I'm just English.
I'm just English, people.
The bloody dog needed dealing with, but not because it was bleeding.
Okay, so now the Easter eggs from last chapter, Arya 10, that I mentioned, and I said the first one was the weakest of the Easter eggs, but Arya notices and thinks about the fact that the two bands in both castles were playing so terribly, and they were playing different songs and were competing against each other, and it sounded like a battle. And of course, a battle was about to ensue here quite shortly after.
Yes.
The next thing Arya notices while they're riding through the camps, she sees archers stringing their bows. It just blows right through that description. But why else would archers be randomly stringing their bows in a celebration situation unless they were preparing for some sort of ambush type thing? Now, the third one, she notices a man chasing a woman. A half-naked woman runs out of a tent, and a man chases after her. Yes. And the man is wearing a tree cat sigil, which is the sigil of House Myatt, which is a Lannister bannerman.
I missed that one. Interesting.
We heard about that house before. Some of the scouts that Yoren sent out, to try and check their path, came back and mentioned that there was a bunch of House Myatt Lannister bannermen.
When Tywin was controlling Harrenhal and the Riverlands.
Yes. Right. Yes. So, and then there's this one I read online that I thought was really fascinating. So, do you remember the game that the Walders and the Winterfell kids played? It was called Lord of the Crossing.
Lord of the Crossing, yes.
Yeah, it's a quick refresher of the rules. It's played over any type of bridge of water. They played it in the Godswood. And the Lord stands on the bridge, and the players approach and offer reasons why they should be allowed to cross. The Lord asks questions and makes them swear oaths. The oaths are binding unless the player says mayhaps quickly enough so that the Lord doesn't notice. So why am I even bringing this up? Well, last Cat chapter, when Lord Walder met with Robb, Walder said, you wanted crossing. He's talking about previously when they wanted to cross the first time. You wanted crossing and I gave it to you, and you never said mayhaps. So he's aware of the rules of the game. And a few paragraphs later, when he's offering them food to ensure guest right, he says, a loaf of bread, a bite of cheese, mayhaps a sausage. So some think that he's possibly balking on the guest right oath by slipping mayhaps in there.
I think that's good, actually. I was intrigued by that one, and I think it makes sense. It seems
It's
a
fun.
frivolous and light note to end our discussion of this chapter on.
I agree. A kid's game.
Yeah. But let's move on, because we need to get this thing finished. Do you have some background for us?
I do. I'm going to tell you about a man named Will of Will, also known as the Widow Lover. He lived during the days of Aegon's conquering. He was a Dornishman who was the Lord of Will, hence the name, Will of Will. And I referenced him when we discussed Aegon's Hand of the King, Orys Baratheon, being captured by the Dornish during the First Dornish War. It was Will who ambushed and captured Orys. It was also Will who removed Orys's sword hand before exchanging him for his weight in gold, along with many other captured lords who all suffered the same fate. That move did not sit well with King Aegon, and it took the war to a whole new level. Okay, so why am I telling you about Will of Will during this particular chapter?
Because you're scraping the barrel?
Well, that deed, as dastardly as it was, wasn't the most infamous of his deeds. That distinction goes to a wedding that he crashed once. And no, he didn't just run up the tab on the open bar. In 12 AC, Will and his men crashed the wedding of Sir John Cafferin, who is the heir to Fawntown, and Alice Oakheart, the daughter of Lord Oakheart. Will then proceeded to murder Lord Oakheart and most of the guests, but he didn't stop there. He then castrated the groom, Sir John Cafferin, making the bride, Alice Oakheart, watch. And then next on the agenda, Will and his men raped Alice and her handmaids. Afterward, he sold the women to a Myrish slaver. This horror was considered the most infamous act of the First Dornish War.
Wow, it was pretty bad. Take something pretty horrific to beat that.
Right, yes. So I was just comparing a previous war with a wedding that was...
yes, I understand why.
You see. Okay, you see where I was going with that.
All right, so comparison with the television show, this was dropped entirely. No, I'm kidding. In general, of course, because this is such an important plot point, this is all there from the feast. Although actually, again, the TV show can't do POV, so it does the holistic. The feast is quite joyful, Cat's seen laughing at one point, it's like a wedding,
Yeah.
To the musicians, to Edmure and Roslin, although TV Roslin seems happier. She seems to be enjoying her time with Edmure.
Okay.
To the bedding, to the armor felt by Cat, although that's on Roose Bolton's arm, not a Freys.
Oh. So that makes it quite clear what side Roose is on there.
To the crossbow bolts that strike Robb, there are fewer named victims. It's basically Robb, Cat, and a bunch of extras. Really, are the victims here. But to the differences, before the action goes down, Robb and Talisa, for 'twas his wife's name in the TV show, talk about their unborn child. If it's a son, she wants to call it Eddard. He is moved to tears. They kiss for the last time. The GreatJon is not there in the TV show. I don't know where the GreatJon is, but he was not present.
Seems like something he wouldn't want to miss.
The scene is punctuated with scenes of Arya getting so close. I'm going to avoid anything specific about that because presumably that's going to come up in Arya's chapter, which is coming up next. Brynden Blackfish Tully is present. He excuses himself for a pee break just before it all goes down. Now, so I just put the question to you, forewarned? Surely not. Of all the people, of the most noble man in the Seven Kingdoms, surely it's Brynden Blackfish Tully. But he did excuse himself and did miss out on all this. So Perhaps in some ways, what happens to him in the TV show might be equivalent to what's going to happen to the GreatJon in the book. He's
Okay.
he's one sort of wild card who was not there when he should have been,
Right.
perhaps.
His bladder saved him.
Right. And of course, the biggest difference is that Robb's bride, Talisa, is present, and she gets brutally stabbed to death through the belly, so her unborn baby gets it too. Well, another big difference is that Cat threatens and murders not Jingle Bells, who does not exist in the TV show, but Walder's latest wife.
Oh, okay.
But he is as dismissive of her as he was of Jingle Bells. He's like, I can always get another. And Cat murders her.
All right. Well, that held true.
Yep. And that's about it. Yeah, I mean, it was well captured, and I will say, the band, who again were mostly made up of Coldplay, played the Rains of Castermere, but the show ended to silence. The credits rolled to silence after all this happened. So
right.
Let's do pedantry corner, because that always cheers me up. You've got one.
It's very minor, as I always say before I give a pedantry. But so Darcey asks Edwyn Frey to dance by touching his arm, and then he violently, whips away from her, and he says, I'm done dancing for the nonce, and she turns away embarrassed. And I thought, did she not feel the armor under his clothes? If you felt armor under someone's clothes and you were not expecting it, you probably wouldn't turn your back toward said person.
I think for our 300th episode, we should do a live session in which you drink. And then we do things like you touch someone's arm and see if you can feel the chainmail.
So it was a little bit of losing the senses.
Yes, possibly, yeah.
Fingertips.
So I've got one that's extraordinarily tiny, but just a thought. The armies were taken over the bridge to the east side of the Green Fork, right? That's where they are.
Right.
There is a potential for Robb's men to come and rescue him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Might you not have held the ceremony in the East Tower and put the bastards in the West Tower and put the bastards in the East Tower, just to put the whole castle and bridge between the treachery and the army?
Right. Yeah, it's just a little further insurance.
Exactly. Now, of course, they did actually want to use some of those armies, so it saved them a bit of a walk, but I just thought maybe if I was planning this, I might do it as far from the armies as possible, because I don't want them.
I could see that.
Anyway, news and notes.
Well, our 200th episode celebration, we've decided, is going to take place on Discord. I think we mentioned that last week. And again, we're planning something live, possibly a live episode, maybe a Q&A with us, possibly both. We're working out the details. But the point of all that is, if you're not currently a member of our Discord community, you'll want to join the server ASAP to get yourself a front row seat to the spectacle.
They're all front row, right? I mean, no.
Yeah, they're all.
Okay,
yeah.
Just to be clear. Okay. We've got a new Lord Paramount Sustainer, Tian Books, which is my favorite handle of anyone on the Discord server.
Yes, it is.
We welcome her very warmly. Thank you so much.
Yes, we're absolutely thrilled to have you on board, and we can't wait to interact with you. And I discovered that there are reviews left on Audible. I had not realized that, but I came across us on Audible, and I realized there were some reviews sitting there, so I'm going to read one, and it's from Michael M, and it's titled Great Show. I've read the books before, but after discovering your podcast, I've decided to read along again. It's been a fun distraction, and the story seems even better this time. Thanks for all you do.
You know what? I'm thinking the same thing. Exactly the same thing of the point I was making about how invested I am in these characters. It made this chapter just alive for me in a way that it wasn't the first time I read it. First time I read it, I'm just plowing through a big long book. This time, I'm thinking about it. I'm concerned about it. I'm considering their motivations, and it's
Right.
tugging my heartstrings. It really is.
Well, you probably didn't, the first time you read it, you probably didn't go back and read it over and over and over again either.
Good point. So let's conclude. So King Robb is gone. Who will succeed him? What does this mean for Jon Snow? Anything? Nothing?
Yeah. Gone is King Robb. He won all his battles, but lost the war due to his youthful impetuosity, I guess. Yeah.
But
What?
you got to ask yourself, was it always going to happen? Because he didn't betray Roose Bolton.
True. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Did Roose betray him because he saw that it was a no-win situation for Robb after some events turned the way they did? Or was he always thinking, now that especially once they split at the Twins previously, and he took the army, the infantry, and Robb took the mounted force, that he seemed to have a lot of autonomy at that point, basically just doing whatever he saw fit.
And what he saw fit was not to Robb's advantage, generally.
Not all the time, that's for sure.
And gone too is his mother, Catelyn Stark.
Yeah, poor tragic Cat. I know lots of people don't care for her. They think she's made terrible decisions and caused a lot of problems with those decisions. But at the time of her death here in this chapter, she believes she's lost all but one child who she feels is gone over to the Lannisters, never to get back.
Not by choice. Not by choice. She's been forced into the Lannisters. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And surely she feels some guilt for her part in all of it. She talked Ned into going south, didn't take the steps Ned asked her to take to prepare the North for war, took Tyrion hostage, brokered this deal for Robb to marry a Frey, and it wasn't her fault that Robb broke the deal. But as a parent, and you might think, why I should not have done that. I should not have brokered this deal. Robb was not ready for such a thing. Or you might just accept blame for it yourself anyway.
Yeah.
And she's just had a very tragic arc, basically, this whole story.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right to lay out some of her missteps at her feet. But on a purely human level, she's had an awful time of it. And that she died. Oh, absolutely. She died with even worse news in front of her eyes. It's just awful.
Yeah. It is. It's really, really tragic story for her.
Yeah. And George Martin, he's done it again. He's killed off a POV character who you've come to know and expect to have around, and the book won't be the same. Never mind the world of the book, but the book itself won't be the same without Cat to go to.
Oh, yeah. She had the second most POVs in A Storm of Swords behind Arya's 10. And I did a little comparison. Ned was killed in chapter 66 of 73 in A Game of Thrones. Cat was killed in chapter 51 of 81 here in A Storm of Swords. So both books had this major upheaval moment, not at the last chapter of the book.
Yeah.
There's still more story to go.
He's also, she's the one mother, right? She's the only mother we have as a POV character.
Yeah.
Unless you count Dany and her dragons, I suppose.
Dany and her dragons, sure.
But so you get that sort of maternal instinct thing, which you need a little bit of to sort of make you feel a little bit loved.
Right.
Edmure?
Yeah.
Edmure, we don't know.
Is he gone?
Again, I think that that chains thing is enough to make me believe that they've kept him alive. Because again, they've got what they want there. They've got their daughter married to the Lord of Riverrun.
Right.
You can't overthrow Riverrun.
Yeah. Now that Robb is gone and the Lannisters have an even more even stronger hold on the realm, how tightly can Edmure cling to being the Lord of Riverrun? He might very well be stripped of that title too.
That's true. You've got to think that Roose is looking to be like Lord of the North, right?
Right.
Then is Walder looking to be the Lord of the Riverlands?
Very possibly.
So
I think they gave it to Peter Baelish. The Lannisters named Peter Baelish Lord of Harrenhal and Lord Paramount of the Trident.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe that ship has sailed, but so that might be good news for
Yeah.
Edmure then. Because if they
Yeah,
were
except for
offering it to the Freys would be inclined to get rid of the Tullys.
we'll just have to see
Yeah.
how things play out with Edmure. We don't even know that he's
Yeah.
alive, let
But let's
alone
assume
whether
he
he's.
is. Is it possible that he's complicit here? Did he know?
Oh gosh, that would be a betrayal on a whole nother
You see,
level.
I can't believe it of Brynden Tully because there's no way that Brynden Tully could be a betrayer. But Edmure, he's not been treated that well by the people who've just been dispatched.
Well, yeah, they've made him the bad guy in a lot of
Uh-huh.
situations.
And now, what was he? He was Lord of Riverrun, but he was a vassal to the King in the North. Now the King of the North
Right,
is gone and has no heir, so the King of the North is now out of the picture. He gets back to his original position, potentially. He doesn't know that he doesn't anyway.
right. Yeah, yeah. Oof. That's tough. That would be tough though. I can't see it, but you're right. We don't know. We don't know what
Uh,
he's been
they
up to, I
laughed. They
guess.
laughed at him for missing his father with the arrows. They blamed him for winning battles.
Right.
I mean,
Yes. A lot
he's
of
a youngest child, and youngest children can act out when they feel belittled.
sure. Yeah, you make some compelling points. It's just a hard pill to swallow right
It
there.
is hard to imagine him being happy and jolly at the wedding and going off to the bedding without a second thought.
Well, true.
But
Yes, he'd be a much better actor than
right,
Roslin if she knew what was
right.
happening. So does this betrayal here, the death of Robb Stark, does this make the Lannisters the clear winner of the Game of Thrones? Are they now is Joffrey on the Iron Throne for the long haul now? I
Well,
mean,
not according to
Stannis.
Melisandre's leeches.
Well, that's true. That's true. Stannis is not out. You're right. He's down, but he's not out. Uh, who else is left to challenge Joffrey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the books end at the end of Storm of Swords. To be honest,
Right. Yeah. I mean, this
it's
is it. We're
over. Yeah,
wrapping up. Yeah.
there's no way forward for anyone else. No, it's yeah, it's. Oh, that reminds me. Actually, didn't the Martells just arrive in King's Landing fairly recently?
They
Yeah,
did.
yeah. That'll
Yes. Yes, they did.
that could be a little sand in the works.
It could be. There could be some sand in the gears here.
Exactly.
And then what happens to the north now? I mean, did Roose strike a deal with the Lannisters to have Joff make him the Warden of the North? And, I don't know if you want to be Lord of Winterfell anymore since it's been sacked, but maybe the Dreadfort will now be the seat of power.
I do think, what else could you offer Roose Bolton to make him do this? It has to be something huge, because
Right.
to remove the Tyrells from the Reach, that's one thing, but to remove the Starks from the North, that's a
Yeah,
whole different thing.
it sure is. That's
And the one thing I wonder is that I would be surprised if he didn't, at least if he got a chance to really correspond with Tywin about this, say, you know what I really need to cement this is I really need the hand of Sansa Stark.
Oh,
It's rather
right.
unfortunate you
Unfortunately.
married her off to your
Yeah. Your youngest.
yeah.
Yes. That would really help. So, although Roose is married too
That's
to
true, but
Walder.
Roose and Walder Frey, Walder the Lord Walder, don't seem to be too bothered by oaths and guest rights and things like
Yeah,
that.
right. Yes, wedding
Yeah.
vows, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So the Freys control the narrative here, right? So
We
what
slipped and fell,
what
all of
happens?
them.
Yes, right. How honest will they be? You know, how are they going to spin this story? It's gonna get out. Do they want to say, "Hey, we put an end to your threats here. We put an end to the Starks in the
The
north."
war in the Riverlands is over thanks to us.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Or do they want to spin it in some way that don't make them look like they were the terrible people that just violated one of the most
if they want to
cherished rules.
If they want to blatantly lie, then that's bad news for Edmure Tully. Because he knows what happened, But I do take your point, though. They could certainly spin it such that it makes Roose Bolton the bad guy, perhaps, rather than them.
They could. Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
Or, they could spin it that the Starks attacked them and they were just retaliating, or, something like that, maybe.
That one seems a little bit unlikely, but yeah.
You never know.
So next up is Arya, right? Probably not at her finest.
No, she and the Hound are just outside the castle, so
I'm not sure.
What's going to happen
sure
with
I can
them?
take the pain.
What's he going to do with her now?
I mean,
his whole point was ransoming her.
That is one thing that I've been sort of like tiptoeing around as we've talked about Arya, is that their journey together has not come to an end, because here they are with nowhere to go.
Right. So what is he going to do with her now? Keep her as a sidekick, or send her on her way, or third option?
We'll see. All right. There are 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a 5-star rating, a positive review, like Michael M did on Audible. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level and reap the benefits therefrom. Or you could just go ahead and donate to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com. We'll accept anything that will keep the lights on.
That's right. We greatly appreciate all of those things. And of course, you could reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com, and you could follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube. And just one final reminder that today's music was provided by W. Braden Madden, and you can find Braden's info in our show notes.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.